Welcome back to another episode of the All Ball Podcast. This is episode number 27, and you are here with your host, Sean and Isaiah, as always. Today, we're going to talk about the All-Star reserves, the trade deadline coming up, and then I have a question for Isaiah that he's going to answer. Hopefully, he will give us a good explanation of why he thinks that. And, well, Isaiah, how you doing today, man?
Doing good. It's nice to see things are picking back up with the NBA after a couple of down weeks, except for, last week the All-Star starters were announced, but things seem to really be moving now. And that's great for all NBA fans and especially us.
Mm-hmm.
So, let's get into the first topic first.
Okay.
Last week we talked about the All-Star starters and gave our thoughts on those. There wasn't much to say except for one glaring bright red pimple in Andrew Wiggins. But this week we have the All-Star reserves announced, and there might be a little bit more to talk about here, so let's get into those.
Okay, so let's just go over first. I'm guessing the snubs. Let's go over the snubs.
Yeah. So let's start with the Eastern snubs. I think Jared Allen and LaMelo are the two biggest snubs of the East. Jared Allen, I mean, like we talked about, him and Darius Garland should both be in most improved player talks for this season. And, fortunately, his teammate was able to make it into the game, but he just didn't make the cut for whatever reason. And as for LaMelo, we all know what LaMelo does. He's one of the most exciting players to watch in the league. He's had up and down games, but when he has up games, they're very exciting. It's some of the best basketball that you can watch. So to see him not be in the game that's supposed to showcase the best that the NBA has to offer, that's a little disappointing.
So I'm also with you on the Jared Allen snub.
Mm-hmm.
He's kind of, I guess you could say, anchored one of the better defenses in that conference. It's kind of been surprising. We've kind of talked about that.
Mm-hmm.
Also, he's had tremendous growth as a player himself throughout this year. And I don't think anybody thought Jared Allen would be even close to an All-Star this year.
Oh,
I mean, I've heard people
not.
say that he wouldn't even be close to being like a star player. Would you consider All-Star better than star? I mean, I guess it's really.
Oh yeah. I think a star player is somebody like maybe what Malik Beasley was for the Timberwolves last year, and like someone like that who's not an all-star, but they have a very prominent role on the team.
Okay. Well, I mean, I guess people really didn't think that he was going to be anywhere near either of those. And look at him now. He's averaging 16 points, 10 rebounds, and I mean he's on a winning basketball team. I know that doesn't really contribute, I guess, to the All-Star selection, but it's all just things you could put into I guess why he kind of deserves it. Another one for me would be Drew Holiday over Middleton.
Yeah,
but
you see, I was gonna address specific switches when we got to like actually talking about the people who did make it.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, no, we can address that now then.
Okay. So the only reason I think Drew doesn't make it over Middleton is because the health stuff. Like he's been off the court a little bit. I know Middleton has too here and there, but I guess they just decided to give it to Middleton.
Okay, yeah. You see, now we can just transition into talking about the people who did make it for the East.
Okay.
Because that I'm going to use that to get into another point. So, like you said, Drew Holiday probably didn't make it because he's missed significant time, while Chris Middleton hasn't missed as much, even though he's missed time too. And that leads me into why did Jimmy Butler make it over Tyler Hero? when Jimmy Butler has missed significant time and Tyler Hero has been playing very well this season.
If you were to ask me, probably just the name Jimmy Butler.
And that is the right answer, sir. Because if we keep going on through, let's take a look at some of the other names that made it. You know, Darius Garland, as we said, he deserves it. He's been playing well. But then after that, we have James Harden, who started this season as one of the worst stars in the league.
Mm.
It looked almost as if this man was completely washed and his career was done. Then he sort of picks it back up midway through the season, but he's definitely not playing like he used to back in Houston, or even as well as he did last year when he did play. So I don't understand how he made it in. Then we have Zach LaVine, another person who deserved it, been playing very well, best team in the conference at the moment. Then it's Chris Middleton. We talked about him.
Mm-hmm.
I need to take a moment for this one. We have Jason
I see on the
Tatum.
end of the list.
Jason Tatum made it here when he is having his worst professional season so far. I'm really at a loss for words. This is another Jimmy Butler situation, but worse, because Tatum has been awful this season. They had to have voted him in on blind numbers. They were like, "Oh, he's averaging over 25 points and like 8 rebounds. Okay, it's Jason Tatum. Let's vote him in." He hasn't even been playing like the best player on his team, let alone an all-star. Oh my good, like I don't understand. How can they have so many perfect spot on players voted in and have so many blatantly wrong players voted in at the same time?
So we talked about this is on the coaches, right? This is coaches' decision.
Yeah.
So I thought the reserves were going to be nearly perfect, like selection wise, compared to the starters, but they almost did just as as the starters.
Honestly, I think you could say they did worse, because when you look at the starters, honestly, it was perfect except for the Andrew Wiggins thing. That just threw everybody off. But everything else was fine. No debates there. But now we get here, and it looks like the coaches literally were just voting names in and not basing it off what the players have been doing.
Yeah, Jaylen Brown definitely should have deserved it over Tatum.
Absolutely, Jaylen Brown should have been in there over Jason Tatum. But to wrap up the East, we have Fred VanVleet, who's been voted in, and he 100% deserves it. Been pretty much throwing the Raptors on his back as much as he can, which says a lot from a 6'2" guard who came up from the G League. So big props to Fred, man.
Okay, well, let's go ahead and move over to the West now. So let's start with the snubs. I'll just go ahead and say mine. I think it's pretty obvious. We've talked about him, DeJounte Murray.
Yep. That is by far the biggest snub of the Western Conference. There might be some other people who you could throw out there, but none of them are as bad as the DeJounte Murray snub. And I think at the end of the day, we might get lucky with that one because Draymond obviously isn't healthy at the moment, so he won't be able to play an All-Star game. So I think they'll probably replace him and have Rudy and Donovan Mitchell even come back from injury yet.
I do not know.
Let me check.
Honestly, this year's been so crazy trying to keep up with who's in and who's out just because of the protocol stuff. So,
yeah.
at times I don't even try to bother to try to see who's in. I just look at the box scores at the end of the night.
Hmm. Yeah, and
But
from the looks of it, they weren't in the last game that they played, so I don't think they're back. So potentially, we might be looking at 3 injury replacements in the All Star game.
mhm.
But yeah, that still doesn't. It's like I get how it works in the sense that okay, you vote in the guys who are injured, and then they get replaced, so then everybody wins.
Mhm.
But it kind of just looks bad in this first surface level assessment of who's in and who's not.
So okay, so we talked about you said 3 people might be changed. So DeJounte should definitely be one. If they don't put DeJounte
Absolutely.
in for an injured player,
Oh,
I probably won't
oh,
watch the All-Star game.
oh man, if they don't put him in, that there has to be some kind of response from fans here. There needs to be a vocal outrage that is large enough for the NBA to hear because that's completely unacceptable.
Mhm.
There's no way that you can put a dude who's by far the best player on his team, averaging almost 29 and 9. Like you can't not put that in the All-Star game. You just can't do that. That's terrible business practice.
But you said 2099. It's 19, 19 and
No,
9.
no, I'm saying he's
Oh, are you
averaging
talking about the last couple
almost.
of games?
No, I say he's averaging almost 29 and 9.
29 points?
No, I'm saying he's averaging almost 20 points, 9 rebounds, and 9 assists.
Oh, oh, I thought you meant 29 points and 9 assists. I didn't
No.
realize you're talking about rebounds. I was like, hold on, I think basketball reference might have something wrong here.
No, he's
Um,
averaging almost a triple double. Let me say
okay,
that. It's,
okay, there we go. Yeah, yeah. It was confusing. So another player for me that if one of those guys gets like you so talked about injured or not injured gets moved off the roster because they're injured.
mhm.
Uh, Mikal Bridges. What do you think about him possibly making All Star team?
I guess I like that. I don't know. Mikal Bridges isn't somebody who I've necessarily ever had a strong opinion on,
Hmm.
but I know for sure he's a pretty good player, but I just think his overall averages will make him a odd fit in the All-Star game.
Okay. Yeah, because I mean he's not much of a. Like, I wouldn't say he's not much of an offensive player. He's more known for his defensive side.
Yeah.
Like so.
He's what Matisse Thybulle should be.
Mm. So, was there anything else you want to talk about the West players or anything? Because I have a question for you. If not,
I'm just taking a short glance to see who else might make it in the All Star game. I really hope they don't pick anybody from the Lakers because they definitely don't deserve it.
mm.
So I mean, at that point, who did that really leave us with though? I guess Brandon Ingram.
I don't think that'd be bad. I mean, you can't really
Yeah,
think of it. I mean, if we can't really think of anyone else,
yeah. I think Brandon Ingram would probably be somebody who I'd be okay with replacing Gobert or Donovan Mitchell if they're still injured for All Star game.
hmm.
All right,
Okay,
that's it on that.
I have a question for you before we move on from like All Star stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Who do you think next year, aside from rookies, because we don't know how who they're going to or whatever,
Yeah.
is gonna make the biggest jump and come out of nowhere and make an All Star game next year?
Ooh, that's an interesting one. Okay. Okay. Because, I mean, who saw Wiggins coming? Who saw DeJounte Murray, even though he's technically not in at the moment, he deserves to
Hmm.
be? Who saw Jared Allen and Darius Garland coming? So,
True.
you see, I think the safe answer is probably Miles Bridges because he
Hmm.
definitely he's on that fringe of deserving to make it this year. Like he's pretty close. So I think if he can just do what he does best this season more consistently next season, then he's definitely a shoe in to make it.
Hmm. For me, I'm gonna have to go Scotty Barnes. I think that he's been
Oh,
pretty great. Well, not pretty great. He's been good
hmm
this year. I think he might have the biggest jump out of all the rookies over the next offseason. Not
okay,
not
that's
saying that the
fair.
other rookies won't have a great jump also, but I think he's probably going to stand out the most out of all those guys, and he might make the All Star team.
What about Evan Mobley though? Because he's been pretty good himself.
That's true. Um, Evan Mobley might make it too, but I don't think it'd be more of a. I'm talking more of like a surprise, and I don't think
Oh,
he'd be
okay.
surprised if Evan Mobley made it.
Okay, yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Because he is averaging 15 and 8 this season, which is pretty
Right,
impressive for a rookie. So,
right. Okay, so was there anything else you wanted to talk about All Star wise if before we move on?
no, that's all I got.
Okay, well, let's go ahead and move on to the trade deadline. We've had our first trade. I guess you could say, I wouldn't say it's a big trade, but it's including a lot of players and it could maybe affect some things. We've had basically our first trade of the trade deadline. Clippers trade Eric, I almost said Eric Gordon, Eric Bledsoe, Justice Winslow, Keon Johnson, a future second round pick to the Trailblazers for Norman Powell, Robert Covington. Oh, yeah, Norman Powell, Robert Covington. So I mean, I think that's a complete win for the Clippers. I don't know why the trouble, other than just to get them under the luxury tax
Mhm.
thing. But other than that, I still don't know what the Trailblazers are doing. We've talked about what direction they need to go in. Doesn't seem like they know either.
Yeah, I think the sole purpose of this trade was simply just to get them under the luxury tax. I really
Hmm.
don't see any other motivation or motives for this trade
Hmm.
unless it was just trying to gain more trade assets so they can make more moves.
Hmm.
But that those two things are the most I can see from this because I definitely don't see Eric Gordon, Justice Winslow, and Keon Johnson being contributing players to whatever Portland is trying to do, whether it's rebuild or contend. I don't see any of those guys helping either of those scenarios.
You said Eric Gordon too.
Oh, Eric. You see, that's how irrelevant Eric Bledsoe is. Nobody, we don't even remember his name. We talk about the
Yeah.
important Eric.
So okay, I guess I'll ask you the question I was going to ask you now because it basically deals with the trade deadline.
Mhm.
What do you think is going to be the biggest move of the trade deadline?
The biggest move of the trade deadline. I think it depends on which team are really willing to make a move because I think obviously what could be the biggest move if they were willing to budge on it would be Philly moving Simmons and hopefully moving
Mm,
forward into a more, how should I put it, a more successful contending situation.
right.
But
And
with them being stuck on that whole situation, I don't think that's going to happen. And the same thing applies to Brooklyn and all these Harden rumors.
mm,
And then also Washington and the Bradley Beal rumors.
yeah, I was about to say, Woes just said the Nets are listing James Harden out versus tonight's game versus Utah. Whether you want to interpret that as they might trade him tonight, I don't know. They're saying it's due to left hamstring tightness, but And also, reports have came out for today that um, trying to the 76ers are expected to make a run for James Harden, and the Nets are open to discussing a possible deal. That's per Shams.
Mm-hmm.
So that you could be right with the Simmons thing. That might be the biggest trade of the deadline.
Oh, especially if it's a trade with Brooklyn,
Mm-hmm.
because at that point we're looking at a Simmons, Harden, and then whoever else they package along with them trade. At
Mm-hmm.
at which point it doesn't matter who else gets moved. That's gonna be the biggest trade of the trade deadline, without a doubt. We're talking about a current All-Star who's a former MVP, multiple time scoring champ, and another former All-Star who's only not an All-Star this season because he decided not to play a single game this season.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't understand how anything could even top that. At that point, fans are going to be talking about that one for a while.
It's kind of funny how Harden still gets traded for Simmons, even though he's not coming from the Rockets.
Right, the same potential trade that I was
Mm-hmm.
talking about before.
I'm definitely still happier with our trade that happened rather than
Oh,
what possibly might happen.
yeah, absolutely. At the end of the day, I've said a lot about Jalen Green, but
Mm-hmm.
I'd prefer having him for our future over Ben Simmons.
I do too. He definitely looked a lot better during the Cavs game.
Yeah.
He looked really good.
I was gonna bring that up, that he finally had a decent game after a long stretch of uh
I think that's a good way to describe it. Okay. So looking at the standings, you asked me this question about 3 weeks ago. I would say about 3 episodes ago, you asked me this question, and I'm gonna ask you this to you because the
Okay.
standings have shifted around, and the answer might change. Who now has the most pressure on them to make a move on both conferences?
Okay. That's a good one. That's a good one. Hmm. I'd say probably Boston out of the East,
Mm-hmm.
because the Simmons Tatum thing, they don't want to break that up. So at
Mm-hmm.
that point, this ninth seed is really concerning, because if they're not going to break up that duo, what can they move quickly to resolve this issue and get back to conference finals appearances like they were having before?
Right.
And
And if I'm
yeah, that roster, it's not looking all that bright.
yeah, I was if to answer your question, what could they move? I think the only thing that possibly is movable is Marcus Smart, but what does he really even bring you back that can help your team
Exactly.
out more than what he already does?
Yeah, you got Dennis Schroeder. That's something.
No, it's not.
I mean, that's the second best thing they have after Marcus Smart.
Okay, so for the Western Conference,
Okay, let me see. For the West, I this one's gonna be a little bit controversial,
mm-hmm,
but I have been seeing some reports that there is a little bit of tension in the Jazz franchise about Donovan Mitchell and his long-term status there, I should say.
mm-hmm,
So, even though they may not necessarily need to make the move now, I think it's something that they do need to resolve quickly if it really is a problem.
mm-hmm,
Because whether it's a problem or not, something that is absolutely true is that I think this team has hit its ceiling. I don't think with what they have now that they can go any further than they've gone.
Yeah, we've talked about how with Rudy Gobert as your best player on the team, you probably won't win other
Exactly.
than, the regular season. But okay, so for me, the Eastern Conference, it was going to be the Celtics, but I don't want to talk about the Celtics again. Obviously,
Mm-hmm.
other than the Hawks, they've been the most disappointing team in the East.
Yeah, well, in the Knicks.
Well, the Knicks too, yeah. But I kind of expected a fall off from the Knicks. Well, I kind of
Okay,
expected the Celtics to be up there competing for a conference finals again. But for
true.
me, it's going to be the Pacers. I think it's not even a move to compete. It's a move to rebuild.
Okay, yeah, I can see that. I can see that.
They're being pressured by all of the NBA fans because I'm starting to feel bad for Pacers fans that their organization can't choose a direction to go, whether to contend or to rebuild, and they're just okay with being mediocre. So I think they're being pressured the most to decide whether to rebuild, which they should do 100%,
Hmm.
or I don't know why they would try to contend.
I'm right with you on that one. I don't know why they try to contend either. Why they would have any belief that they could go from 13th seed to contending and they're a small market franchise,
Hmm.
that's beyond me. But I think they absolutely do need to start rebuilding. I fully agree with you on that one. We saw the best that we're ever going to see out of the Pacers. So it's time that they just blow this up and reach for something new. Build
Hmm.
around Chris Duarte.
Yeah, they could. I mean, they have a lot of trade pieces. So
Absolutely. Oh,
Sabonis,
yeah. So I was going
uh,
to say Sabonis, without a doubt. Malcolm
Turner,
Brogdon, Turner,
Warren,
Warren, even TJ
even
McConnell as a tack on to some other player that they want to move. Karis LeVert.
even yeah, I was about to say Karis LeVert if they want to.
Yeah.
Also, okay. So for the West, I actually have the Mavericks, just because their situation with Brunson. I think they could trade him for another shot creator. I don't know who that is, but I think he will probably get moved, and I think a lot of pressure's on them to move him.
Hmm. I can agree with you there. I think another thing about Brogdon is just, I'm not Brogdon, Brunson, is that you can only do so much with a small guard like him.
Hmm.
So even though he has been having a pretty good season, I agree they need to move him just because he's only going to be able to contribute for so long. We've seen it with all of the good to great small guards. It just
Hmm.
doesn't pan out long term. So I think it's better to just try and move him, if not now, as soon as possible, just so
Right.
you can get the most back for him while he still has that pretty high value for what he is.
Hmm.
And then even though this is not a prominent player, somebody who I think they just need to move with him is Reggie Bullock.
Really, I think
Yeah.
that Reggie Block, even though he hasn't really had like I won't say the greatest season, I think he fits the team well because they need shooters other than Tim Hardaway Jr. and he kind of
You
fits
see,
that.
and that's why I think they should move him because he hasn't been shooting that well this season.
Hmm.
Yeah, like his shooting has been around average, maybe a little bit below average. So I think it's better that they just kind of move on from that. While he did have a crazy game in the last game they played, I think that would be a nice piece to tack on in a Jalen Brunson deal.
Hmm.
So yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it would be a deal sweetener. He's definitely not enough of a piece to warrant moving by himself.
Yeah, I don't think so either. Okay, so I just put up this list of 4 trades that says NBA trades ideas to blow up the 2022 playoff race.
Mm-hmm.
Most of these look good. I kind of just want to go over one or two. Actually, I don't want to go over this one. This one I don't think makes any sense. But um, okay, so I want to go over one for sure.
Mm-hmm.
DeJounte Murray gets traded to Cleveland for San Antonio receives Colin Sexton, Jetty Osman. I think this is a definite win for the Cavaliers. They get rid of Sexton
Oh yeah.
and they get Murray. Why the Spurs would do this, I don't know.
And that is why I am laughing because that deal sounds so ridiculous for San Antonio. Why would you trade an all-star caliber player for Colin Sexton?
Mm-hmm.
That just it does Colin Sexton and Chetty Osman, who's done pretty much nothing. So I don't see how that deal even makes sense for San Antonio to want to do in the first place. Ideally, if you're moving DeJounte Murray, you're moving him for something promising in return.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so here's I think is the good one. And we were just talking about the Mavericks. The Mavericks receive
Mm-hmm.
McCollum and Larry Nance Jr. and Portland gets Tim Hardaway Jr. and Reggie Bullock. So there you go, talking about Reggie Bullock being needing to be moved. I think
Mm-hmm.
McCollum is a definitely better than Tim Hardaway Jr. and they get Larry
Yeah.
Nance who could play some decent defense.
They get Patrick, the GOAT.
Yeah, the menace Patrick, the animation, yes.
But yeah, I think that's a pretty good deal. I like that one. I
Mm-hmm.
think for one, it facilitates the one thing that I've been saying about Portland forever. Dame and CJ need to part ways.
Mm-hmm.
So that happens. And then on top of that, it gives Luca a better secondary player there.
Mm-hmm.
Well, actually, would you consider him the secondary player over Porzingis?
Um, no, only just because Porzingis has been there longer, so he's probably going to stay in that secondary role.
Okay, okay,
But
that's
I mean, McCollum probably should be secondary role, just
mm-hmm.
because I think he's more productive than Porzingis.
Yeah. Without a doubt, he'll be the secondary ball handler for the team.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that alone is a good reason to make that deal. Another player to help take some of that pressure off of Luca.
Yeah. Oh, hold on. Okay, I saw this James Harden and Philly, and I didn't see this as a 3-team trade. Hold on. Okay,
Mm.
this looks pretty interesting. The 76ers receive Harden. The Nets receive Jaylen Brown, Dennis Schroeder, Josh Richardson, and the Celtics receive Ben Simmons and Seth Curry.
Hold on. What? Who does Philly get again?
Philly's getting James Harden, just James Harden.
Just James Harden. Okay.
Okay. Uh huh.
I I think that's a pretty good deal. That's three teams who all need to make moves.
Mm-hmm.
Even though I'd say Brooklyn definitely needs to make a move the least. I I really like that. And I like that especially for Boston because
Mm-hmm.
it pairs Jason Tatum with a player who's not going to be redundant. With Jaylen Brown, you just have two guys who want to have the ball in their hands, get to their spot and pull up.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas when you put Ben Simmons with him, you have somebody who's going to be actively facilitating to get him his shots
Mm-hmm.
while he doesn't shoot shots. so, so I think I like that one. I like that for Boston. As for Philly, James Harden and Embiid together as a blockbuster duo immediately catapults them higher into the contention for a championship for this season. I think
Mm-hmm.
losing Seth Curry will hurt, but we're talking about getting James Harden here. So,
Right.
yeah, no, Seth Curry isn't worth James Harden.
Yeah, no, definitely not. James Harden and Embiid in the pick and roll would be just terrifying.
Yeah, that who who do you pick? Who do you
you
who do you
you just
pick?
I think you just give up.
Exactly. You
At
have
that point you just
Embiid.
give up.
You have Embiid who can pop it from three or pop from the mid range, or he could just roll all the way to the basket and that's a free dunk or a quick post spin or something. He's gonna
Mm-hmm.
make it work. And then you have Harden, who you never know if it's his floater or if it's a lob, and you just
Mm-hmm.
kind of you have to commit to one until you realize, oops, it was the other one, and now you gave up 2 points. So
or you foul him.
or you foul him, and he gets 2 free throws. Either way it goes, you're giving up 2 points in that scenario.
Yeah.
So yeah, I
Okay.
like that. And then Brooklyn, the biggest thing they're getting there is obviously Jaylen Brown.
Right.
Yeah, and I think I like that for them too. Even though it's gonna force Kyrie to be more of a playmaker, or KD even since he's shown some flash there, it's gonna
Mm-hmm.
force one of them to become more of a playmaker for the team, since that's what they're giving up if they
Right.
give up Harden. But I think they could make that work. I think they could make it work.
I think I would love to see this trade actually happen.
Oh yeah, besides the fact that it would be extremely exciting, just in general,
Right.
it's
Just
just it's an all around great trade for every team
right.
involved.
Okay. So is there anything else you wanted to talk about before we move on to like the last question about trade deadline stuff?
No, that's all I had on that.
Okay. So the last question I have for you for this
Mm-hmm.
episode is who is in more trouble? The Lakers or the Nets? Because the Lakers right now are the ninth seed and they don't
Mm-hmm.
look like they're climbing back up into the conference. The Nets are on a 6-game losing streak right now. Katie's health has been on and off. I mean, on and off.
Mm-hmm.
Harden's he's been doing better. Kyrie still can't play half the games. They're 6th seed right now. So who's in more trouble?
If I really had to put money on it, I'd still pick the Lakers as the team that is in more trouble. Because at the end of the day, they are in the play-in scruff. At
Mm-hmm.
least the Nets are out of that. While they may be on a losing streak, they're in a cemented playoff spot at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of the day, while KD's health is questionable, at the end of the day, you know when he comes back, he's going to win them games. Whereas the Lakers, you have LeBron who's missed some games with some knee soreness, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
You have Anthony Davis, who time and time again proves that he's made out of paper and glass. And then you
Mm-hmm.
have Westbrook, who time and time again proves that he should give up on his basketball career and commit to becoming a construction worker, because man, does he enjoy building houses. So at that point, I think it's pretty clear to me, at the very least, that the Lakers are in more trouble here. And then on top of that, I feel like the Lakers are also in more trouble just because there's such a prominent market and they're doing this bad. The
mm-hmm.
Nets have had a bit of an explosion in prominence by getting, the big three. But at the end
Right.
of the day, the Brooklyn Nets are not the Los Angeles Lakers. It's just a night and day difference there.
Right. I'm gonna agree with you that the Lakers are more in trouble just because, like you said, I still think the big three can work
Mm-hmm.
in Brooklyn. It's just everything has kind of gone wrong.
Yeah.
But at least with the Lakers, we've seen what their big three can do.
Mm-hmm.
And comparing it to the Brooklyn's big three, the Lakers are gonna get washed.
Oh yeah. The Lakers have no deep playoff hopes based off what we've seen from their big three.
Mm,
I mean, let's assume that they make it in as a 7 or 8th seed in the playoffs.
mm.
First round, they're facing either the Suns or the Warriors. We saw what the Suns did to them last year, so I don't
Yeah.
think adding Westbrook is gonna make that any better. And then the Warriors are pretty much the perfect team to counter the Lakers, just
Mm,
because the Lakers love to go big and score inside primarily. Whereas
mm.
the Warriors, for the past 7 years, basically, they've shown that killing you from deep is their specialty.
Right.
And the Lakers just, unless they have another freak game where LeBron, Westbrook, AD, everybody just turns into shooters, they can't stop that. So at that
80 ain't
point,
a shooter.
yeah, exactly. That's why I said it had to be a game where they go off because none of them are really shooters. And when LeBron is your best shooter in your big three, yeah, that's terrifying. But yeah, no, there's no way that they're getting out of the first round with either one of those matchups. I don't even
Mm.
think they could get out of the first round if they jumped up to a 6th seed and had to face Memphis.
They might not even make it out of the play-in.
I don't think they dropped that low now. Because we're talking about what is that, a 4-game difference or a 3-game difference?
Oh no. I'm saying like they might not win their play-in
Oh,
game.
okay.
You know,
Oh yeah. That's definitely a possibility still. That
yeah,
is
because
very much so on the table.
if who would they play right now? It'd be would it be the Clippers or would it be the Trailblazers?
I believe it's I believe it'll be the Trailblazers.
I think so too.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think
because it
it's 7, 8, and 9, 10 play, and then the winner of those two plays.
right.
Yeah.
Okay, so if they're playing the Trouble, you never know. Dame could go off if he's healthy.
Yeah.
So could
Even though
CJ.
even though it's looking like he's not gonna come back for the rest of the season.
Hmm.
But yeah, at the end of the day, let's say that he does come back. Either one of those two can go off and torch you from deep, just like the Warriors would.
Hmm. Yeah, so I think it's the
And
Lakers.
and that's the thing, because we just talked about the Portland matchup. Let's not talk about who they could potentially face in the second game of the play-in that they'd inevitably have to play if they did beat Portland.
Hmm. I'm guessing you're talking about the Clippers when Kawhi and PG.
Well, yeah, I think they said PG's out for the rest of the season, like even playoffs included.
Hmm.
But Kawhi coming back is a possibility, and he might be rusty, so that could save them. But we're talking about a lot of factors that would have to go their way for them to come out of the
Right.
play-in, which would mean the Clippers either get a rusty Kawhi or get no Kawhi, and PG obviously just isn't coming back at all. Or if
Hmm.
they face Minnesota, they just have to bank on the fact that Minnesota is a young, inexperienced team. And that's how they're going to beat them. And that's all they have.
Right. And I mean, you really never know. Even without Kawhi and PG, they just lost to the Clippers last night. And well, I mean, LeBron didn't play, so I'll give him that. But still, you let Morris Senior. I can't. I never remember if it's Marcus or Keith, whichever one it is.
For the Clippers,
Yeah,
it's Marcus.
Marcus.
Yeah.
Yeah, y'all let him drop 29 on y'all. That's embarrassing.
Hey man, when he was on the Knicks, he was a 20-point per game guy.
Nah, no, I don't want to hear that. I don't want to hear that. I don't want to hear that. He's old now.
I mean, he wasn't that young when he was on the Knicks. That was like 4 seasons ago, I think. Okay, that is a long time.
I don't want to hear that. Talking about Marcus Morris Sr. like he's John Wall back in the day or something. I don't know.
Hey man, at least Marcus Morris now is better than John Wall now. So that's something.
I mean, I would hope so. John Wall isn't even playing. All you got to do is score the ball once. You've already averaged more than John Wall has the whole season.
Hey man, John Wall is out there averaging 3 Dougies, 2 hand claps, and 5 blank stares a game, man. Come on.
Oh man, you almost made me spit on my water. You caught me right when I was drinking. Oh, but yeah, like I said, you never know what could happen. You could have a Marcus Morris Sr. turn into Jordan for a night, and yeah, that there goes your whole season.
That's very true. That's very true.
But all right, man. Was there anything else you wanted to talk about before I guess we go ahead and end the episode?
No, man. I think that's it for me.
Okay. All right. So remember to buy your Marcus Morris Senior is the GOAT shirts. But that's gonna be the end of the episode. If you like the episode, go ahead and like and subscribe. Comment down below what you want to see, what you want to hear us talk about. Isaiah, any last comments?
Don't forget, share the podcast with your friends, family, anybody else. It helps us out, which helps us help you. And don't forget to check out the Instagram at All Ball Podcast YT, where you can give your input. Don't be afraid to shoot a DM, reply to a story post, comment on a post, anything. If you have a thought, constructive criticism, and anything that you just want to say.
All right. We will catch you on the next episode.